at the AUCC meeting, and I'll let Dan speak to that a little bit, but my understanding is it was reviewed and they generally gave the approval to move forward as a group with our voting on it this month. So Dan, did you want to add to that at all?
No, you're absolutely right, Warren. The AUCC had their opportunity to review it. We received no additional comments, and then we asked for permission from them to take this item forward for a vote by MAG, and they all agreed.
Great. Thanks for doing that, Dan.
So on the agenda today, this is up for possible action. Warren, has there been any changes since the last meeting, or are we still basically looking at the same document?
Correct. The version dated 6/9 is the most current version.
Okay.
What about
No
the
change.
what about that micro cable installation? Is that addressed in here? I don't remember.
I believe we chose not to incorporate that because that's a different type of installation and somewhat controversial with our agencies, if I remember right. Does that ring a bell with you?
Yeah, I would agree. But if it ever we decide to put it in here, if we can ever agree on a method that works, this would probably be the section it would go in, wouldn't it?
I suppose potentially, yeah. But I think that'd be something we'd throw back with AUCC to discuss too.
Right, I agree. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. So I'm glad it's not in here for now.
Okay, good.
So with that, I think, Gordon, if I think we're on the right track, we can move forward with the vote on this.
We'll need a motion and a second.
Okay, motion for a vote.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dan. Let me get the voting.
I've got it back on screen now.
Oh, you got it back up on screen? Okay. Now I've got to get my screen back. There it is. Okay, and this was case 1904. Okay, Avondale.
Yes.
Buckeye is a yes. Chandler.
Yes.
El Mirage. Not present. Gilbert.
Yes.
Thank you. Glendale. Not present. Goodyear. Not present. Maricopa County.
Yes.
Thank you. Mesa.
Mesa's yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Peoria.
Yes.
Phoenix.
Yes.
Scottsdale.
Yes.
Surprise. Not present. Tempe. Not present. Youngtown. Not present. So the yeas have it, 9. And 3 not present, 4 not present, 5 not present, 6 not present.
Okay.
So case 1904 passes. Thank you, Warren, for all your work on that.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you all. In particular, thank you, Dan. Dan contributed a lot to this, so I appreciated his help a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks for getting it, including the, the UCC in it, AUCC in it, and industry. We want to keep doing that when we do these type of things. So.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to create our standards, not in a vacuum with just us in the room. It's nice to be able to have industry and agencies that actually do this on a daily basis, and keeps everybody on the same page. So again, thank you. Moving on to case 2001, miscellaneous corrections. Looks like we're up to letter F. Oof. Not sure if there's any additional bloopers cases that might be added, or I think actually we're not allowing any more cases. So
There's no new ones, but there was a couple things that were discussed last time that I made updates on the markups on the details. For example, on the first one, 20-01, I think it was decided last time to change it from payment to pay item.
okay.
Hey, this is Carl. I suggested the pay item, but I was looking at this. It's showing I think it's showing a hatch. The diagonal hatch there is the area of the pay item. And again, I kind of wonder if this is older drafting where we might be better off shading the area, because that diagonal could be interpreted as something else than besides an area. I don't know if we just want to stick with just changing the word, or would you want to also have it show a shaded area like we did on the other detail?
So Carl, is this one that you're putting through?
This wasn't originated from me, but I'm the one that suggested. It was first one indicated as that pavement, and I said no. I believe it's meaning pay, the pay item area for the measurement and making a progress payment. And
Okay.
so I don't know. I'm just suggesting that should that area be a shaded area like we did on, I think it was 550, the scupper.
Away. Right.
The spillway. It could mean it could be interpreted as a score mark or reinforcing. It's kind of it's not common practice really to use that type of hatching as indicating an area in more current drafting standards.
Any thoughts or comments on that from anybody out there?
Well, we can look at some of the other details. What do they show for shading?
I think 5. Go ahead, Carl.
Was it 550 the one we did for the spillway? Or is that? I'm thinking of a different one.
Yeah, it was the spillway detail.
I don't know. I think we can maybe work with Gordon on that when he's in the mode of preparing the specs. Maybe that's just a graphics issue we can deal with. But I kind of agree with you, Carl. It could be misleading.
I think it's fairly similar to some of the head wall graphics for reinforcing. That's kind of what it looks like.
Well, I'm okay if they want to put that kind of steel in there.
Well, there's nothing else indicates steel or mesh or anything. So I'm thinking that go into, Gordon maybe could give us a sample of what it looked like shaded as opposed to that hatching.
Yeah, I can mess around with it and see if it looks better.
You got to make sure that the shading doesn't overpower the other line work there, but I think it would help the detail.
Okay.
So, and letter B is just changing the revised, taking the revised off of the detail. Letter C was just changing the classification, the ASTM class from 30 to 35, or change it to 30.
It's from 30 to 35.
Okay.
It already shows the correction.
Okay. And moving down to D is just changing or removing the ASTM. And E would have been
Just this reference to 340.
yeah, just the simple small. And F was the valve extension, just changing the welds on the plate and the pipe sleeve. So the plate and the pipe sleeve would be 3/16, and on the nut at the bottom would be a 1/4 inch weld, just to be consistent with the manufacturing. So if we don't have any more, I'd like to move on to item number 7. Case 20-02 is the detail 346 fire line detector check valve.
So when are we going to vote on the bloopers? Next month? Or October or what?
I was planning to have them on the agenda for next month. Hopefully we can finish everything up then.
All right. So do we need to notify in the minutes that this will be up for vote next month then? This case?
Yeah, that's a
The
good
blooper
idea.
case?
I think that's a good idea, just to make it clear.
Okay. All right, thanks.
So item number 7, case 20-02, detail 346 fire line detector check valve. Warren, you've got some information on that?
Yes, I do. Gordon had emailed to let me know that I guess this was discussed at the Water and Sewer this past meeting, and City of Phoenix may still be using this detail. And I think what I wanted to do is just discuss with the group how to move forward with it. Personally, I'm okay with either way. If it helps City of Phoenix to keep it for now, and then obviously we'd have to do another case because this is outdated. My preference would be to remove, because I think as a group we decided that this would be more appropriate outside of right-of-way. And then they can resubmit into that and do an update. But again, I'm open to either way, but I wanted to see what everyone else is feeling as our best option. Either we keep it as is for now or move forward with removing. So let the discussion begin.
And Eric, didn't you say that it was the City of Phoenix that typically uses this detail?
Do they use it or do they have their own?
Warren?
All I've heard from, and Gordon, maybe you can enlighten us a little bit, but I guess they were using the mag detail is what I gathered.
Matthew, are you on? Do you want to respond?
Oh, yes, that is correct. Yeah.
One thing that I discovered by sitting in on the Phoenix specifications supplement group is that they are still referencing the 2015 version of the mag specs in their current supplement. So even if we remove this from next year's edition, as of right now, they're still referring to the 2015 version, which is still online. So they could still do that. Since they're in the process of updating their supplements this year, when they come out with a new supplement, they would need to either include this as part of their supplement if they still want to use it, or I guess we could keep it in MAG, but if we do, it does need to be updated because it's referring to some materials that, you know, brand names that don't exist and things like that.
So just a question, how often does the city of Phoenix use this detail? Is this something that's a commonplace installation, or is this kind of a one-off?
So this is Matt. It's kind of like that, you know, just kind of case by case from what I've gotten from the people I've talked to over there. But we are in the process, like Gordon was saying, if we need to put it in our specs, and we're looking and doing that.
The other thing that was discussed was, since this is more often used in the outside right-of-way, we may want to remove it from the main MAG specs, and then when we have time to update it and revise it to make it more current, include it in the outside right-of-way specs that Peter's group is working on.
I would probably just suggest it that if it's only the city that's using it, then we should really belong in our supplements. I mean, if there's no other agency out there that's using it, I don't think it belongs in MAG then. And like you were saying earlier, we're going through that effort now, so we can definitely add it to our supplement. And at that point, we probably take the burden to update it. But I think there was a consensus nobody else uses it, right?
Well, that's what people are saying, but you never know. I mean, it could be used on occasion. So, and if Phoenix still uses this, even though it's outdated, you know, that's the whole purpose of MAG is to try to help eliminate or reduce the different agencies or different cities' MAG supplement. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe we just leave it for now, and then I do agree we should probably update it and transfer it to the outside right away when that section's ready to go. So.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe Paul actually brought this up when we first started, and I guess Mirage was installing one on a current project. So I guess if El Mirage is using them, but it sounds more like it was something that was outside of the right of way. But regardless, if they're still using it, you know, maybe we could again update it and get it ready for the outside of right of way group, and or give it to City of Phoenix and let them put it in their supplements, depending upon how the rest of the committee feels on keeping it. Any other thoughts?
My suggestion is to leave it in. We got potentially 2 agencies now that might use it. I haven't got a comment back from our fire people yet either. They're a little interested in it. You know, there's like one camp likes them underground, one camp wants them above ground.
And that's generally the word that earlier in the discussions I had gotten with our fire marshal, and she had discussed it with other fire marshals out there, and that was the consensus, that at least maybe she didn't get with Mirage, but that it wasn't being used. But
no, it's not common.
I'm okay. Like I said, I'm okay either way. So I agree with Jim. If it's, I don't want to have another group have to create another supplement for it at this time. But we can always make the update, or somebody can bring the case to update it later.
So then would this be, we would keep it as case 2002 and make the updates and most likely have a carryover case for 2021?
That's an option.
It would not be a carryover case necessarily, right? Because I wouldn't be the sponsor.
Okay, so we would pull it. We would pull it from the 2020 case list and then if somebody wants to revive it for next year. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
This is Peter. As part of the outside right-of-way, we could revive that or bring it up as a case next year in terms of just the updating the standards component of it, the references to manufacturers.
And keep in mind, if we were to create a detail, I mean, yeah, easiest out is just to revise this current detail. But if we wanted to incorporate other above ground double detector checks that are currently being used as more common, then that would be a good option. So you'd have a type A underground, type B above ground, however you want,
Right.
however. So it may
Yeah,
not
we
just
start
be
that-
as easy.
No, but we could start that migration, and we've been wanting that for a while, of moving the check valves anyway to an outside right-of-way.
Makes sense.
So it sounds like, Peter, you would take it on as a 2021 case for outside of right-of-way?
Correct. I think that'd be, again, low-hanging fruit for us to grab the first ones just to kind of get the ball rolling on that. And when we get to our group, we'll talk about it a little bit more. We're really getting a lot of expansion of bodies to help now. So this may be a good one to add to the list.
Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good idea. Are there anybody out there who has opposition to it? Does anybody see any issues with it? Not hearing anything, so it sounds like that's what we'll end up doing, is we'll pull it from the 2020 case list, and we'll reintroduce it next year with Peter, with the 2020 out of right-of-way group. So,
Sounds good.
all right, another one down.
Kinda.
Well, right now it's bobbing. It'll come back up tomorrow or next year. So, all right, moving on to item number 8, case 2003, revision to section 725, the Portland cement concrete. Jeff, are you out
Thanks,
there?
Craig. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Gordon sent you guys a revision. Sorry for the last minute scenario revision this morning. So what's in your packet has had a slight revision to it. He's got the cover page up there, and it's just basically some additional language is added for clarification to section 725.9A4. So if you want to turn to page 7 of the 725 section, to that particular subsection. Over the last couple of months, the only real comments I've had or from agencies has been some clarification to some of the language that's in part 4 there at the very bottom of the page. I had some communication through Warren with Chandler staff and Carl with his staff at McDOT. And then, Jesse Rodriguez also called me. He and Rob Duvall have been talking about it. We kind of walked our way through it. Each one of the conversations, by the time we were done with the conversation, everybody was good with the concept of what we were doing. But Jose expressed a concern that maybe there needed to be just a little bit of clarification to one of the sentences and maybe an additional sentence in there to try to make sure that it's totally clear what we're trying to accomplish there. So that's basically what we've done here. And if you see the areas in blue that aren't highlighted in yellow, that's basically what we've added to it. So there was a sentence that was added after delivery ticket. The additional discharge time shall not exceed the maximum additional time based on the dosage noted on the approved mix design of the delivery ticket or delivered ticket. And then the next sentence, we took out the words prior approval from the engineer and substitute approval for additional discharge time from the engineer prior to concrete placement. We basically haven't changed any of the language or the intent or anything, but I think I appreciate Jose's comments and language suggestions, because I think it does help clarify exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. Does anybody have any questions about that or concerns about that language?
And Jeff, wasn't this all basically how the standards, how the ACI and all the new standards are actually written currently right now also?
Yes. Yeah, we're trying to basically go by those things. And what we're doing in this particular section is by using the hydration stabilizing admixtures, allowing the time limit to go beyond the 90-minute current limit. We're not changing the default. The default is still 90 minutes. We're just giving an option to the contractor to exceed that time frame based on the job site requirements if he gets prior approval from the engineer. And that's kind of what the clarifying language is here, is we're not trying to just give carte blanche any time frame possible, but we're also not trying to put any limitations on that based on the usage of the correct usage of the admixture dosages. So what the contractor will need to do is basically put the dosage and the associated additional time on the delivery ticket so that the field staff will know what's going on. But prior to that, he needs to have approval from the engineer before that can move forward.
So your actual time extension will show up on the ticket itself, is that correct?
Correct, because that's the only way that field staff are going to know what's going on, kind of thing. So it's kind of a twofold scenario. You get the approval for the additional time based on the dosage rate, and then that's also got to be communicated to the staff in the field so that they know what the scenario is.
Right. So it's not going to be left up to the contractor going to the inspector saying, hey, trust me, we can just add a couple extra minutes to this. So no, thank you, Jeff. This is
not at all.
No, this is, and I think the language is very clear too. Thank you.
Well, it's you can thank Jose and Rob for helping come up with that language that made sense to them, so that makes it easier for us out in the field.
Okay, are there any other comments on this? Is everybody okay with it? The language is written.
Looks good to me.
Greg, I still look at this as a really minor change and just a clarification. So I know we had talked about the possibility of voting on this case today. I'd like to still do that if nobody has any issues with the change in the language.
Yeah, I know when the revised language came out this morning, I went ahead and went through it fairly quickly, and I'm okay with it. Like I said, it's pretty clear to me. So in terms of the city of Buckeye, I would definitely move for action on this, but I want to see what the rest of the committee has.
This is Carl. I know our materials group has thoroughly vetted this, and I believe they called Jeff and talked about it, and I was told that they're okay with it. So I'm okay with going forward with it.
Yeah, that's correct, Carl. I had quite an email chain with Gant, and then I had some direct conversation with him also, and they were okay.
Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything, Jeff, so I think I'll ask for a motion.
This is Carl. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, and I'll have the city of Buckeye. I'll second that one. So I guess we'll go through a vote here. Gordon, you happen to have the voting list handy? There it is. Thank you. So on case 20-03, the revision to section 725 Portland Cement Concrete, Avondale.
Yes.
Buckeye is a yes. Chandler.
Yes.
El Mirage. Not present. Gilbert.
Yes.
Glendale. Not present. Goodyear. Not present. Maricopa County.
Yes.
Mesa.
Yes.
Peoria.
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise, not present. Tempe, not present. Youngtown, not present. So yeas got it, 9-6 not present. So again, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome, Craig, and thanks to the committee and all those who provided information and wording back to me.
It's always nice to bring standards up to current code. So I guess from there, let's move on to item number 9, case 20-04. It's the new section 303 pervious concrete base course and revisions to section 323 pervious concrete and new pervious concrete pavement detail. Roy?
Hey, hello. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. So first of all, I kind of want to throw out a thanks to Jeff Hearn as well as to Gordon. They kind of introduced the case for the first time at our meeting last month. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but I wanted to thank them for putting that out there. And I thought maybe just real quick, I'd give just a little bit of background on the case or what has gone into putting all this together. The committee way back, I think it was in 2019, had asked for an LID presentation or LID, which low impact development presentation, which we did at that time, or which was done at that time. And kind of what spawned off from that was I volunteered to put together a pervious paving case to bring to the committee. And going through that process, some of the things I've done was certainly to research in the valley here and find out where we've had some pervious concrete installations that were done as part of one of or multiple city projects. And I kind of keyed on the park and ride facilities. Here in the last several years, we've had a park and ride go up at the city of Glendale. We've had one here at the city of Scottsdale, and they've had one just recently at the city of Peoria. So I gathered as much information as I could. All those cities were very helpful, and gathered information, plans, and specs on that. And then kind of next reached out to the contracting community, and actually, in looking at those park and rides, there was one contractor, Mike Riggs, with I think Progressive Hardscapes, that actually installed the pervious concrete at all 3 of those park and rides. So I've worked with him closely through this process, and then of course have worked with our working groups, worked with Peter, who's been very helpful in the outside right-of-way group, and then have worked obviously with Jeff in the materials working group. And through that, we've also had eyes on it from, I think, Rob with Wood, one of the material lab testing companies here in the city. And then obviously researching online and most recently attending some webinars by the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. So that's kind of the background as to where a lot of the information that you see in front of you on this case has come from. I don't know what would be easiest, because I know there's a lot of material here and I don't want to waste folks' time. I can kind of take it from the last meeting that we had in July, and basically since that point, we did bring this case up again to the materials working group when we met last month, I think around mid-July. And at that time, there was no comments from the materials working group on what you see in front of you. I then did reach out to City of Glendale, basically to Tom Kazmarowski, and solicited comments from him, as well as sent this out again to Mike Riggs, who's the contractor with Progressive Hardscapes, to see if he had any additional comments. Mike Riggs did not have any additional comments with the case as you see it here. Tom did have just a minor comment on our section 323. And then from that point, I also got some comments from Jose Rodriguez at the City of Phoenix. So I've been very thankful for that. We can either break it into starting with comments, or I can give you a little more background on some of the individual specs, if you would like. So I can just briefly go through the section 303, which is the brand new proposed section specification that we've got. And that's basically, it's as it's titled, placement construction of coarse aggregate base course for pervious concrete pavement. And what this spec essentially is for the coarse aggregate base course, which is the layer beneath the pervious concrete. So it's obviously a pervious base course. Basically in this specification, we call out two types or two different aggregation or aggregate or gradation types, a number 4 rock and a number 57. And those two were chosen because those were basically the two that were used at the park and rides that were mentioned previously, as well as in doing some of the online research. It seemed to be that those were two, and probably even more so the number 57 rock is a pretty typical gradation that's used for that coarse aggregate base course. But as recommended by the materials working group, we also give the contractor an option to propose a separate or a modified gradation with approval of the engineer. We do call out, I guess if you go to the next page there, Gordon, on the subgrade preparation there up at the top. Subgrade preparation for pervious concrete is a little bit different than what we think of in subgrade preparation for most of our construction. Typically on our asphalt or our concrete pavement, we want that subgrade compacted very dense. We're looking for 95 to 100% compaction. With pervious concrete, we are not wanting the subgrade to be, I guess what I would say, overly compacted. So the section in there basically gives a recommendation or direction to the contractor that you don't want compaction greater than 95%. And again, this has been pretty typical with our park and rides and with other industry standards. So that because the more compact you make the subgrade, the less pervious or porous it is. And this whole system is essentially, even though it's called pervious pavement, it is basically a drainage product. It's taking water and bringing it through the concrete and through the coarse aggregate, and then obviously over time it's going into the subgrade as well. So there's a section there on the filtration and separation geotech fabric, and essentially we call out the type to use, but the fabric itself is only to be used when specified in the contract documents. In both the detail as well as in the spec, we don't call it out as a default usage. And a lot of that information came from Mike Riggs, again, our contractor, who actually said that in the past it was basically used as a separation fabric to kind of keep your fines from migrating from your subgrade up into your base course. But in our environment here with the dust and other things, that fabric acts just as you would want it to. It separates out the fines. But if you've got a lot of fines or dust that is washing through the top of your pavement, through your concrete and into your base, it's then trapping that material above your subgrade, and over time it's affecting the permeability of your system. So his recommendation was not to put it in by default, and so that was kind of what we followed on that there. And so that's I want to say kind of the highlights on it. if we want to, I guess we want to go to the next section, and then obviously we can open this up for comments or whatever else everybody else has. The section 323, placement of pervious concrete. That is an existing spec that's lived in MAG. Jeff was instrumental in putting that in a couple of years ago. And essentially in this spec, the changes you see are obviously in red, and they've been some minor wordsmithing that's been recommended by the committees. And there's also been some if you scroll down a little bit, Gordon, we've updated some of the ASTM testing in it. And that was one of the things I learned in the Pervious concrete webinars that I just sat through here over the last couple of months, was that ASTM C140 has actually been replaced, the void content and density, with the ASTM C1754. So we had a couple of those called out in the spec, and so those are shown as updated there. And I think if we scroll down, the pervious concrete base preparation, since we have developed that spec 303, we're essentially referring to the spec there in that section 323.5, and we're also calling out for the contractor to make sure that prior to placing the pervious concrete, we're making sure that the coarse aggregate base is in a moist condition, because this is a dry mix. You want to keep that water from being pulled out of the mix any quicker. So you want to make sure that that's properly wetted. And then as we scroll down to 326, this is the one comment that Tom from Glendale had actually made. His recommendation was, and it was to be consistent with the verbiage that we've used in this spec. You can actually see in that same paragraph, it looks like the second sentence, a self-propelled roller screed shall be used for strike off. And so it was just kind of to be consistent, instead of calling it out as a roller compactor, to call it out as a roller screed. And that definition does seem to be consistent with what you see out there when you would search up the name of that equipment. I think the next one, the 323.6.1 joints, just the word pavement was inserted in there. There was addition to isolation joint or expansion joint at 75 feet on sidewalks. And then I think if we go to the next page again, another ASTM from C140 to C1754 update. And then something that actually came out a couple of meetings ago at our materials working group in the 323.8. The change was made to the density test, whether you want it at 5,000 square feet or each day, whichever is greater as opposed to whichever is less. So if you've got more than 5,000 square feet, you're actually getting multiple tests. If you've got, let's just say 10,000 square feet that's going in, or something greater than 5, that you're getting tests per every 5,000 or each day, whichever is greater. So that was the comment that was made there, and I think that's the majority of it. I think at the very bottom, there was an update potentially for the committee, whether we look at this as being measured per square yard, like a lot of other concrete that we measure, or keep it as it currently is, which is in square foot. So the and that next is just kind of a clean version that you've got there, Gordon. If we go down to down to the detail, the detail that you see there, we've provided one kind of a quick section for a pervious concrete pavement for vehicle traffic, and one also for sidewalk installation. This was actually, Jose had a couple of comments. I don't know, Jose, if you want to just start or throw your comments out there, or start some discussion on comments.
Yeah, Roy. I mean, my main comment was mainly whether or not we should be providing a section. I'm not too knowledgeable on this. When I reading through the spec and through the detail, nothing really says that it's not intended to be placed on the right of way. I'm just concerned with some designer down the line will just grab the detail and throw it in there. Say, hey, just follow this pavement section, because at the end of the day, it wouldn't meet the detail requirement. So I wasn't sure if I understand now the intent is to provide something. But we should clarify either more in the detail or in the spec. The intent is not to be, not to replace a normal street pavement section. So this is really intended for, at least for the pavement part of it, it's intended to be outside of the right of way. And for the sidewalk, I don't have any issue with the minimum thickness being called out for the sidewalk.
Yeah, I guess if we look at the pervious concrete pavement section that we got, the 6-inch min, that was, I want to say, pretty standard with a lot of the information that you see out there for at least a minimum thickness. You really don't want a thickness less than 6 inches. Obviously, because this is a drainage system, the thickness of your pervious concrete as well as of your coarse aggregate base course are a function of how much rain or water you're expecting on the site. So I felt at least putting in a minimum out there would be appropriate. Much the same as we call out minimums and stuff in other parts of our details.
No, mainly what the concern is for the vehicle traffic section is there see a minimum. I don't know if there's going to be the intent to actually go out there and analyze whether or not the pavement needs to be thicker. I'm just concerned that they're just going to grab the detail as is and just use it. And nobody's really going to go to the level of figuring out whether or not what the actual thickness should be. But I understand that there should be a minimum requirement just because, at one point you don't want anything less than a certain thickness. But again, looking back, that's really just mainly for the vehicle traffic section.
And I will say, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you did have a comment that maybe for vehicle traffic, maybe we elaborate, because in our, basically in the description in our spec, our 323, we actually specify that the work or this specification is basically intended for light traffic areas. So maybe it would make more sense to, instead of just call it vehicle traffic, underneath the pervious concrete pavement, call something out that would be like a light traffic area. If that's...
Yeah, that probably addressed part of the concern.
I'm just making notes here. So we can...
Roy?
Yes.
Do you remember what the sections were on the park and rides? I remember that the center sections and areas where you had actually transit buses driving on them were conventional concrete paving, and just the basic parking areas where you would have light vehicular traffic cars and passenger vehicles, those kinds of things, was actually the pervious pavement. So they took into account that if you had heavier vehicular traffic loads that you needed to do something in addition to the standard pervious design, and they chose in that particular instance to put, you know, a regular PCCP kind of materials. But do you remember what the minimums were on those projects for the pervious areas where there was light vehicular traffic?
So I actually do. The Glendale Park and Ride actually had the 6-inch minimum for both the, or actually 6 inches they had for both the pervious concrete section as well as the coarse aggregate base course. So it was just like what we have shown here. It was 6/6. The Scottsdale Park and Ride was also 6/6. And I think the Peoria Park and Ride, they had a little thicker pervious concrete. I think they were 7.5 inches over 6. And all of those coarse aggregate base courses were either the number 57 or the number 4 rock, which is consistent with our spec 303. So
I understand your concern, Jose, but I think this still, you know, based on what we've seen on those applications, and the Glendale Park and Ride is, gosh, I think it's 10 years old now. It's been out there for quite a while. I think it still performs well at that 6-inch minimum kind of thing.
It's older than that, Jeff.
Okay, there you go. I think at least time flies, you know. I knew it was at least 10 years old. So yeah, so I think that these numbers will still work, but I do like the idea of maybe, you know, hedging our bet a little bit and maybe putting light vehicle traffic in that parentheses underneath that portion of the detail. It still is up to the, you know, the designer to determine, you know, what his loads are going to be, what those, that's the way paving is designed, right? Those thicknesses are based on traffic loads and how much traffic you're going to have on it. So.
No, you guys are right. I think it's just maybe clarifying the light vehicle traffic. That's the intent of that cross section. Again, my main concern was somebody was going to grab that cross section and try to build a street out of it.
Is that something we could maybe put a note in there for the thickness, you know, the thickness by design with a minimum of 6 inches?
Well, I think it already says that, Craig, when it says 6-inch minimum.
Right. Well, I'm talking basically the section has to be designed, but it can be no less than 6 inches.
So if you look at note number 1, the intent was to try and call that out. The use of pervious concrete pavement is intended for light traffic areas and pedestrian surfaces above a subgrade as approved by the engineer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe we just change that from vehicle traffic to light vehicle traffic.
I can certainly do
and
that.
that goes along with note 1, right? It's the same language we have in note 1.
That was my thought, yeah.
Yeah, they're now consistent. Heaven forbid somebody doesn't read the notes. You know that happens too, don't you?
Yeah, I just proved that.
Hey, Roy, I also just noticed on note 5, minimum is misspelled right here where I'm kind of circling it.
You know better than to ask an engineer, or at least this engineer, to spell.
I'm usually just as bad. I just happen to see that one.
If it wasn't for spell check, say basically English is my first and second and whatever number you want to add after that.
I had a couple of questions, Roy.
Yes.
So going to the table 303 for your coarse ag design, this is something we're actually out here in Buckeye we're dealing with right now. We use the same number 57 for our sewer trenches, and we're having some issues with fractured face material coming out. We've got a project that's under construction right now, and our project manager has been talking to me, and he's been going out to the stockpiles and saying 20 to 25% of the stockpile is not fractured at all. Is this something, I mean, it's going to be under a road base. It's going to be basically a structural section, something we want to put in there for a fractured face, and what a minimum ASTM's got there's a minimum that, let me see if I can find it real quick, because like I said, I've been working with him directly. Is it D448? No, D448's the 57, the 57 mixed design. So it's C12. Okay, so when you've actually got C12 in here, but C12 actually talks about the type of fractured faces, class 1, class 2, so forth and so on. Is that, do you think, is that going to be something that you want to maybe specifically make mention to on fractured faces? Because that's going to be kind of a critical point, being it's in a roadway section.
I guess my initial thought on that is the intent for this or this pervious concrete isn't necessarily to be used on your high speed roads. This is more for like we're calling out light duty or parking lot type areas. And as far as the fractured faces going, I guess my initial thought, and open it up to the committee, is I don't know that the fractured faces is as critical with the pervious design, because you want that void, you want those voids. And so if you don't have as tight of a compacted layer for that sub base as what you would for your typical paving, you're wanting it to have a void ratio or permeability, so that water is flowing through. And I think I've seen online where in some places they don't even specify that it has to be, that the coarse aggregate necessarily has to be, I was going to say angular, that you're wanting the voids, you're wanting the percolation to go through that coarse aggregate layer.
Yeah, I just wonder that as an unfractured, we'll call it just a river rock with smooth surfaces and round edges, understanding that the drainage is kind of that's the key to this. But with round rock, I mean, you're not going to have anything locking together for actual structural for the pavement itself. I mean, walk on a crushed stone stockpile and you'll sink a little bit, but you walk on a river rock stockpile, then you're going to sink quite a bit more. I don't know much about pervious concrete and how it's, all the design aspects to it, but it's a question that just came up because, like I said, we're actually dealing with that right now out here, and it's been a concern.
Gotcha.
Roy, let me jump in a second. I think, Greg, to be honest, what we're trying to do in the instance of that rock base underneath the pervious, as Roy's already talked about, is to be, a drainage material for that water to quickly get off the surface and get down into the subgrade, or even as a reservoir for part of that water as it slowly works its way into the subgrade, so that it gets off the surface of the concrete and out of the concrete. So one of the things we're trying to do is use readily available, relatively easily accessed materials. So try to keep the cost of that particular subgrade product down. So his intent has been to try to find a couple of materials that were, again, readily available. Number 4 rock and number 57, as you all know, is pretty concrete rocks. Those are what's used in concrete every day, and there's no fractured face count to their use in concrete. I think we may have some issue if we start talking about a specified fractured face count for this material, raising the cost and the application of it. I don't think I've seen that in any past specifications as we go back to talk about projects that have worked here in the valley and that have functioned well. I don't think they incorporate any sort of fractured face count in those materials. But by using a locally available material like a 57, most of your concrete aggregates are probably in the mid 50s or so, if not higher, on fractured face count anyway.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's a concern that, first and foremost, it's going to be a surface. It's going to be a pavement surface where traffic will be driving on. And we're getting an added bonus of it's pervious now, so the water's going to drain through it. So now we've got a basically finished surface that drains. So I would think it's first and foremost design criteria would be to support traffic and then to drain after that. So yeah, if 57 right now is about a 50% fractured face, again, I'm not a pervious guy, and so I would kind of lean on everybody out there who's got more.
Well, Craig, the only issue with that, and to Jeff and kind of Roy's point on with being 50% there, and I understand your point about carrying load, but you're kind of after two different things. If you're going to carry the load, then your water is going to have to shed off somewhere, and then you're going to have an adjacent, retention, when that's the whole defeating the purpose of doing the pervious in the first place. So I'm not sure this application would ever get into that type of roadway for that reason alone.
And maybe that's where I'm getting stuck on all this is when you design a road, you design it to be solid. And in this case, we're not actually doing that because we have a specific secondary reason for it. So maybe it's just my brain working in the old road design area.
Well, the other thing too, keep in mind, Craig, for most of your parking lots that you're going to see this material in, if you were using, an asphalt material in there, you're not going to have 6 inches of asphalt in that kind of application. So we put 6 inches minimum of the pervious concrete on there to help bridge part of that. That's not a flexible surface, it's a rigid surface now, and to bridge part of whatever issues might be involved in the subgrade application.
Okay, well, that actually kind of brings up another question I was going to bring up in a second. When you're talking a rigid surface, again, I'm not a pervious guy, so I'm going to rely on everybody else. On this detail that Gordon's got up to 28, where it's talking about sidewalk, it is a open graded material with a light cement content, I'm assuming. So if you don't have anything confining either one of the sides, do you have any cracking issues?
You ask actually a really good question. I guess the webinar series that was put on by the National Ready Mix that I had watched, they said there's multiple agencies that actually, for whether it's concrete pavement or sidewalks, they actually, because the surface almost looks like, they kind of call it like a Rice Krispie type surface. So your shrinkage cracks or your expansion cracks, or probably more your shrinkage cracks, aren't as visible as your standard concrete that kind of has the cream brought to the top and a nice smooth surface. The surface on your pervious concrete isn't smooth. It's, like I said, kind of like a Rice Krispie treat type surface. And so there's multiple agencies, or even I think they said even in the state of California, where they don't even joint it. They allow it to crack wherever it wants to crack because the cracks aren't that visible, and it's not necessarily detrimental to the end product. And that was on what we've put together on these specs and details. We actually refer to the contract documents for any type of joining plan, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, Roy, you're absolutely correct. Craig, you got to think of this as like, even though you might think the cement content is low on it, it really isn't. The cement contents are still pretty high because you're trying to coat each one of those particles and basically glue the particles together while still leaving enough voids for water to pass through it. So it's not like a lean concrete application. It still has a pretty good cement content to it, which helps bind all those materials together. The other thing you're concerned about is certainly not pop out of the surface, right? You don't want, since it does kind of look like a Rice Krispie kind of scenario, or a popcorn kind of deal, you don't want those surface pieces popping out either. So that's important to have the right mix to make that work. So he's right. The industry, it doesn't really recommend any sort of joining kind of applications. They kind of leave it to the actual design of, the parking lot itself, interior corners and round surfaces. And if you had an embedded light standards or things like that where you'd maybe want to come off with some joining or something like that, rather than, the hard and fast rules that we're kind of used to when it comes to sidewalks or concrete paving, those kind of applications. It doesn't really fit in this material. This material is such a different kind of application.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, the concern is just these sides cracking off, but I totally understand.
Yeah, Craig, I think we're actually looking at doing this in some of our new upcoming some buildings around Avondale, and we've had some discussions on it, and the what I've heard is that we might put like a concrete header around some of these areas to put an edge on it, a real concrete header, and then for the joining, they're actually talking about using like you see around pool decking those I don't know what you call them, drain joints or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To work with this stuff, but it's only going to be in common areas with pedestrians. There's be no vehicles or anything, and it's just because you got large concrete enclosures and it's just hard to find a way to drain it. This is where it comes in handy. So.
Yeah, that's right, Jim. And that puts a lot of versatility to be a little bit creative with these materials. You even in some parking lots, you'll see that they'll have curbing around the edges and that basically contain the pervious concrete in the middle of the curbing kind of scenario, like you would see in a normal application. So you don't see applications very often where you have, the actual pervious as a standalone edging all by itself without something else around it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never watched it go down other than the video, and so I don't know how difficult it is. But one of the things I heard a contractor talking about it was the purpose of like headers or concrete headers is it makes it easier to finish, because it's not that you can't really finish it that much like conventional concrete, because you don't want that cream to come up to the surface. So you got to move quickly, and so the concrete headers on the edge kind of sets up grade for you, and then the joints that you can put in are really needed mainly for cold joints, just for construction joints.
That's
what I've been hearing on this stuff. So.
And Roy's already mentioned it, but those NRMCA webinars, they aren't very long, and there's a number of them on various things, and they are really good. This is a real different animal when it comes to regular old concrete that we're all kind of used to seeing being done, and they really are worth the time to try to watch a couple of those to get a better feel for what the material's like, how it goes down, how it looks, how it works, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, like I said, I got a handful of questions, and those videos will probably help. And again, I'm just not versed in pervious concrete. I'm still got the brain set of nice hard concrete, creamy top, edges, joints. So I'll go back and look at those, and if I have any additional comments or questions, Roy, I'll just get a hold of you.
That sounds great, and I feel for your struggle, because I've had a lot of it myself. Because this product it's somewhat counterintuitive to what you're used to, what I've been used to as an engineer, wanting to make sure your subgrade is nice and overly compacted, or you can't have too much compaction, and this is just different.
Right. So, and I'll have to watch those videos and try to wrap my head around it. So,
yeah. One comment I have, Roy, is that I wouldn't mind on that joint, on that detail 228, where you call out the curb per contract documents. I would like to have us add in a ribbon curb as an option too. Yeah, that I would like to add ribbon curb to that.
To actually call out the detail for the ribbon curb is what you're thinking.
Yeah, because I think, like I said, from what we're seeing, we're going to end up doing, some kind of header, or we call it ribbon curb, but something that's flush with the surface of the pervious concrete pavement. So I just think that might be an option. You're going to see is you know, a ribbon curb application. So I think it might be a good idea to include that here as an option.
Certainly. Oh, I can definitely add that.
Hey, Roy, this is Warren, and this kind of chimes into what Jim was saying. On my visits to California, I had noticed in some of their private streets, probably private streets, not public, but along the edges, there's a pervious strip along the curb edging before you get to the actual gutter. So maybe that was their intent, to use the edges of the roadways for the pervious drainage too. So just as a consideration in this detail or other down the road, that might be an application for it too.
Oh, that's good.
One of the
I can send you a picture if you'd like to see the location in California.
Sure.
One of the other applications I've seen used is in conjunction with conventional asphalt paving, putting sections of pervious in to provide the drainage. So you slope the asphalt, and I'm sure that's exactly what you're talking about, seeing, Warren.
Exactly, Jeff. Yeah.
The slope down to the pervious, and now the pervious provides the drainage for that, for the water to disappear rather than having to go into a storm drain or some sort of other collection.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that in California, Warren, too, but it was more like a sidewalk. It was like a 4-foot wide strip, and there's no curb on either side of the road, and the road kind of was sloped to the one side. And I thought, well, they just got sidewalk on one side of the road, but I looked at it closer, and it was really, you know, it looked like it was pervious, and I'm sure that's what it was. It was like a 4-foot wide pervious sidewalk, you know, and it was on the downslope of the road.
That's the total idea of this, guys, is to just provide some real basics, you know, some generic kind of stuff. And Roy's done a great job in doing that, and then allow people to, you know, design and be creative using these things based on whatever applications they may have. I'll make one other comment too, is as we've talked to contractors who are experienced in doing this, even though Roy's put it on the detail here, the contraction joint, you know, using a joint cutter is almost gone away. Almost all of them now are using, if they put joints in them at all, they're definitely doing saw cuts, because they've found trying to tool this material gives you, it's difficult to do. You end up with a rough looking surface. You end up sometimes with spalding those surfaces because of the action you've gone through with the tooling thing. So vast majority of them are just doing whatever they need to do in saw cuts.
What about cold joints, Jeff?
Well, yeah, well, of course, cold joints, yeah. But I'm talking about, you know, application of joining, you know, in the middle sections of it.
All right.
And I echo that, Jeff. I've seen the same thing where if somebody has a choice, and if they've got the proper equipment, that they prefer to do the saw cut versus the, like you said, the tooled joint. And one thing I guess to think of too is dependent upon your thickness. If you're trying to get a joint in it, you can probably get your thickness a little bit easier, or your depth of a joint with a saw cut. But I didn't want to exclude one or the other, so that was why I put them both out there, because I think they both are used. Or if you're using a smaller, or if you're installing a smaller area of concrete or maybe a sidewalk, maybe with a smaller width, you would want to tool it with the pervious concrete joint cutter.
The last comment I'll make, which was what I said a minute ago, but really this is the last comment. Contractor is very important, because as you guys can already see with the questions you're asking and trying to get your head around how this is done versus conventional concrete and so on, having a contractor who has the experience in working with this material really makes a huge difference on the final outcome of the project. And that's why we've put language in there to make sure that any contractors are doing this isn't their first rodeo, that they've got, you know, certified people who have, you know, gone through the training on how to do this material and have some experience doing it. It makes a big difference.
Okay.
And we have that called out if anybody's interested in the general section of section 323. I think it's 323.3. Calls out all the different certifications that are required by the contractor. I'm sorry, 323.3 under general. Shall be experienced in the installation of pervious concrete and shall employ no less than. So yeah, this isn't intended for people that have never done pervious before to use this product. This isn't what we're specifying in these documents.
All right. Well, Roy, thank you. Like I've always said, I like new technology, and I apologize that I'm not, I'm very uneducated on this, but I plan on going through some of these videos and seeing if I can't get a little more up to speed on it, but thank you, appreciate it. Any other comments?
This is Peter. I just wanted to mention that we would like to see if we can get this through this year. The desire is not to have this a carryover case, so I would just emphasize, please have your folks look this through and let's see if we can try to get this voted on this year.
And certainly any comments anybody has, either yourself or through your work groups, feel free to send them on my direction.
Okay. Gordon, I believe after this meeting, are we just looking at one more in September?
That's the current plan. So
it's going to be really tough to get it. Yeah, it's going to be really tough to get it through this year, being that you know, we've only got one more meeting. We would have to vote on it next meeting.
We will see what happens, though.
That's right. We're all sitting here virtually, so odder things have happened.
Well, we can maybe agree if you want to have an October meeting, since it's, you know, kind of painless being virtual. So, but that's it. You know, Gordon needs 2 months to put everything together. So, I don't know. That's just a suggestion I have. If he is adamant to get this through this year, be a quick, short meeting.
That's a fact.
Yeah, the other thing is we need to, especially for voting things, we need to have a quorum of members, of agency members, and we barely do today. So any future meetings, we've also got to keep that quorum.
So, Gordon, what do you think? We'll bring that up in today's meeting in our general discussion to see where everybody sits with that, and I mean, maybe make a decision this meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, we can move on then. I think that's a good idea. So again, thank you, Roy. This is, I like new technology. I think everybody's pretty much on board, and we will move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 10, new and potential cases. This is discussion for potential cases in 2021. Miscellaneous corrections, revisions to section 610.4C, changing reference Hdpe and PVC to a thermoplastic pipe. I'm not remembering who actually brought that up, but I think it was in terms of, since we have so many different flexible conduits that are coming into the system, there's Hdpe, PVC, PE, changing it to a thermoplastic to kind of incorporate all of the different options. And the next bullet item, detail 212, the utility pothole repair. I believe.
Hey, Craig, on that first item, that might have been from Stu Waller. I think you might have received that from him, if I recall.
Oh, did that come in from Stu?
Yes, he brought it up at the Water Sewer Working Group meeting.
Okay. So the next bullet, they're talking about utility pothole repair. Arvid, are you out there? I don't remember hearing you. I don't think he's out there, but I think Arvid was going to try to move this forward in the 2021 caseload. So we've been working on that in the water and sewer working group as well. So the Phoenix detail 1569, that was something that Peoria actually brought up. Dan, do you want to talk about that just a little bit? And I can probably add on to it as much as I can.
Yeah, it appears that there's a number of agencies that utilize this detail. Our traffic guys really like it because it doesn't have the grate, and it works where we have our bike lanes on our arterial streets. So instead of having to refer to a Phoenix detail all the time, they would like to convert it to a mag detail. And we were hoping that other agencies would like to follow suit.
Yeah, I know Buckeye's on board with it also. In fact, we've created our own, it's basically the City of Phoenix detail. We do the same thing. We don't want the grate in the road for bicycles, but we like the idea of the lip of curb is consistent all the way through. So you do a mill and overlay, you don't have any jogs for the milling machine contractors like that a whole lot more. So I know Buckeye's on board with it. We'd like to see that that detail come in as a mag detail, and then we get rid of ours. So, but that's coming up next year.
Mesa would like to see that detail also.
Okay. So, anyways, moving on to testing frequencies, Avondale. I know Jim, you've been working on that with your guys.
All right. It's a challenge because everybody's different, but we're going to try to come up with a consensus. It might be a little conservative, but then at least it'll be established for contractors for bidding purposes, and then cities can relax it if they want. But we're just trying to get something put together because it's really kind of hodgepodge and missing in mag. A lot of contractors want to know what to bid on when they're testing. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're working with a couple labs as well. So, again, we're trying to get the industry involved to help us out and to be, get their feedback as well. So that'll be coming through probably case next year.
Cool. Good. Same thing with the potable water hauling. I know you guys are your water group's working on that.
Yeah, we'll have a case next year on that too. So.
Okay.
Again, we'll be following. We're just basically taking excerpts out of the county spec and the AAC.
Okay.
State spec.
Okay. So, and Warren, I think, are you still working on the Hdpe adjustment rings?
Yes, Craig, I'd like to bring that in next year and work that through.
I know I've been working on manholes for quite a few years, and I think once we get those adjustment rings in here, then we're starting to talk about a very corrosion resistant style structure. So
one snag, not necessarily, but just the complication with that is that trying to accommodate the rings for certain types of fiberglass manholes that have a different neck that requires maybe a few more details to be drawn, but we'll get into that next year.
Okay. Definitely the new technology you've been talking about that is always nice to hear. So.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a manhole that'll last 50 years. from top to bottom.
So we're working on it. That is a fact. So, all right, everybody, I do appreciate all this stuff and any new cases that could be coming up next year.
Can I add one other potential case for next year? On the topic of ADA, running slopes and cross slopes. Well, I think we've done a good job in our updates to our details, curb ramp details in particular, for accommodating room for construction error. For example, we don't design our curb ramp running slopes to the max, 8.33. We set that at 8. And sidewalks are not at 2%, they're set at 1.5. So that allows for room for error, maybe a tree root that changes a sidewalk slope. obviously, these things come up when on our transition plans and our ADA assessments. But one of the things we have not incorporated, I don't think, into MAG is the running slope topic. On a roadway, obviously, if you're talking about a flush or a sidewalk that's flush to the curb, then you're allowed to run with the grade of the road. But when we have detached sidewalks, then you have the 5% maximum rules and things like that that would apply, and then on site as well. So next year, I'd just like to talk about maybe some updates into likely the detail 230 sidewalk and the section 340 spec for running slope, some of those allowances to provide room for error.
Okay. Do you think you'll be starting the ADA work group back up, or is it just going to be, we'll discuss it in the main group?
Likely just the main group. We'll see where that goes.
Okay. Yeah, if this is going to be the only item.
Oh man, I want another working group.
Have trouble just getting to yours, Jim.
Yeah, no, I know. Just kidding.
So, well, thank you, Warren.
Don't be kidding. We may have one for you. We may have an idea for another working group for you. So when you come to the outside, let's talk about that.
So
All
Craig,
right. Yes.
The asphalt working group may have another case for next year. It was brought to our attention rather recently, certainly after the July deadline for cases. Section 321 10.2 on sampling of asphalt, the current MAG spec calls out for AASHTO T168, and AASHTO in its infinite wisdom has decided that they no longer have T168. It's now been reclassified from a standard test method, which is the T number, to a standard practice, which is now an R97. So we'll be looking at that and make sure that if there's any changes between the sampling procedures there. We also call out Arizona Test Method 104 for that too. So we're probably going to be looking at trying to clean that up a little bit too, so that we can get that sampling procedure down.
Okay. Sounds good. Any others out there? Not hearing any. I'm going to move on to item number 11, working group reports. Water sewer. Jim?
All right, so we met on July 21st. We had a little discussion on some miscellaneous corrections. Stu Waller was there, or attended, I should say, and he was talking about reviving the discussion on laser testing or laser profiling to verify deflections. So we might look at that next year in a case. We might have to change some definitions. What else? We talked about that valve extension key.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to do a case next year on that. Sounds like so.
Oh, is Avondale going to put that one together?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
And then so my two cases are already approved. So again, thanks for everybody on that. And then we had Arvid was there, and we talked about the utility pothole repair detail 212. So we're going to be working on that detail for the utility pothole repairs. I think the consensus is we're going to leave the square one in as an option still. But we are trying to push for more of the keyhole around coring with the replacement of the cookie back in. But yeah, we need to open that up, have discussion again with the industry on that and the SUE stuff. We talked about a little bit about the sampling and testing frequencies. You know, again, we're just kind of focusing on trench backfill. You know, I don't know, we're not really going to get into asphalt and that type of things. Jeff, I don't, we want to talk about that on another case with you guys. So if it needs any, you know, adjustment, so for frequencies of testing. Then we had a brief discussion on the manhole frame and covers. Again, there's industry push to try to get clever with their engineering design and try to make these things lighter. And so we want to keep an eye on that. Just as a heads up to other agencies, you want to just, you know, check the weights of these things, because they're getting creative, and I think, you know, they're trying to get them lighter and lighter. And I know if they get too light, then there's a concern of them, you know, getting sucked up or walking away or whatever. So looks like, you know, in the future there's going to be some industry adjustments in these manhole frame and covers. Then we talked about the case on the future case for potable water hauling, portable water hauling, portable water hauling. And that was about it.
Hey.
Our future cases. Again, about the potential for the Phoenix catch basin. I think most people are in favor of adding that in, or adding the Phoenix detail. So that was about it. And we're going to meet Tuesday, August 18th, 1:30, with the help of Gordon and company.
Yeah, we've got another Zoom meeting planned for that.
You do, you said?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So that's it, Craig.
All right, well, thank you, Jim. Asphalt materials, Greg, Jeff, Brian.
I'll take it. So you guys have the meeting notes in the packet. Obviously, we had discussions over the two cases that we have, 03 and 04. We also had some discussion from the city of Mesa on you know, laboratory accreditations. Nothing really has moved forward in that. That's in a research mode kind of now at this point in time. So that may materialize as something next year. We'll just have to wait and see. Alex Carter with Vulcan had some specific questions about some items from City of Phoenix projects and City of Mesa projects. And unfortunately, the questions he had couldn't be answered by the staff that were in the meeting. So we asked Alex to direct those questions to some of the other pertinent people inside those agencies. And as Jim's already brought up, Rod Godwin, you know, brought up the issue of, you know, testing frequencies, aggregate base materials, and so on. Our City of Phoenix participants that were on there, Rob and Peter, both brought up the fact that they've got a table that they use that's on their website, readily available for people. And I put a link to that on item 5 on the meeting notes that are in your packet if you guys wanted to take a look at that. It's a pretty detailed table. You probably have already looked at it and seen it on sampling all kinds of different materials and all kinds of different applications. So, you know, as we go forward, if we're having more discussions about this, that might serve as a good starting point for some of those discussions. And it's already out there and readily available. I messed up when I sent out the meeting notes and didn't put the next meeting date. That would be Thursday, August 20th, and obviously it'll be another virtual meeting. It'll be monitored by the ARPA staff, so we'll set that up. It appears we will need potentially have some more conversation on case 2004 on the Pervious. I really would like to see if we could move that forward this year. So I would encourage you guys to, what was provided in the packet today, make sure that your staff see that. And if they have questions, I would love to have them be involved in the meeting so that we can try to handle anybody's concerns and so on, and have everything the way it needs to be to still try to get that on a vote here. and potentially next meeting in September.
Jeff, is that are those pervious videos, pervious concrete videos? Could we send those into MAG and actually have them posted to the MAG website so everybody has access to them? And you know, for me, mostly to educate me, but I mean, it would give something for the entire committee.
I understand what you're saying, Craig, but I'm going to tell you, NRMCA likes to put things out for free to a certain extent, but they get a little nervous about other agencies posting stuff. Let me check into that and see if I can't, if I can provide the links at least to their websites where you can readily find those things and do them. I think we could do that, and between Roy and Gordon and I, we could get that out to committee members so that you guys could pass those on to whatever people you need to do. I think we provided that early on. We'll see if we can't dig that back up and do that again.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. Moving on to outside of right-of-way, Peter.
Yeah, I kind of kept my mouth shut a little bit when talking about new cases and new technology, Craig. I'm excited to hear that you want to see a lot of new technology, because that's, I think, what we're going to be offering. We did have quite a good virtual turnout with a lot of new people, agencies, the consulting world, and we're going to be reaching out more towards, and of course, ASU with Ann Reichman, who's been just a fantastic getting people involved now with the outside right-of-way. Of course, the current case Roy has already gone through with the with Pervious pavement. Again, we have the priority of wanting to see this happen this year, so we're trying to encourage it. But we, with the new blood, we have gotten a number of other cases off and rolling. We are actively preparing a case for vegetated or rock bioswale sections and details. In fact, we have a very well-developed draft that will be ready to go in January. We're trying to get a number of them put together. So, yeah, I'm not going to go through all the notes, but we basically had a long discussion on the draft and the state that it's at right now. It definitely will be ready in January to be presented, and this, I think, fits the definition of outside of right-of-way perfectly. The other ones we've got up and running and we wanted to use the vegetated bioswale as kind of the example one, and now that we've got a number of new people who've never done these, they're seeing that, how it looks, and what a MAG specification, or they've been calling it magifying the specification process. And so Eric Bonds with the City of Phoenix is putting together one that is dealing with sediment trap detail. Keith Kesty is also looking at putting one together for the curb cuts related specifically to the drainage systems that go to these low impact development type systems. These are all coming out of the LID document that has been put out, and we're now trying to convert them from design documents to construction documents. That's been our big challenge. But I think the group is learning quite a bit on that. We talked about some future work. The county has given us a short presentation on some of their test plots for their drainage systems. And so county, the key person here is on vacation this past time, so we're hoping he can give us an update. We're trying to look to see how that's going to be adapted into it. The next item I want to talk about was one of the most interesting ones. We've had we had a small group break off to talk to landscape architects and look at their systems and a number of MAG details, and that's why I mentioned that we're thinking there may be in the long run the ability to have another working group, which would be basically an architectural working group that would take on a lot of those orphan specs that we've had kind of languishing for a long time and start addressing those. So we had a subgroup meeting. Gordon facilitated that on Monday with Ann, myself, and Wayne on how we would put that together. They're going to be addressing and reaching out toward the landscape architect community. And the key spec on that one was the existing landscape spec that is in MAG right now, and getting those professionals involved to look at upgrading that spec. And that'll be our test case one there, but I think we'll be moving forward with landscape architects in the future on looking at our standards, looking at our specs, and getting them involved with the process. We have a number of items that could be moved in there. We'll talk about, I think, right at the end here. Other ones that have been hanging in there that I'm going to be pushing forward is we've got other people kindling those specs. I'm going to be pushing forward, and before the first of the year, I want to have something put together for a detention tank, detention tanks. We've got the City of Chandler's existing standard, but we're also looking at the other types of detention tanks that are being used and how that can be done. There was a discussion on tanks that are being used underneath structures. I didn't realize that, in City of Phoenix and some cities where there's no landscaped area, they've been putting some of these in. I think we're going to stay away from that and focus on the landscaped areas and the parking lots more than anything else. Then we did have a long discussion on dry wells. The LID community is not really a fan of those, but we did talk about some possible environmentally friendly options for drainage systems within, as opposed to just a straight dry well. That, this is a new world we live in now. Let's look at what the new technology is that's out there and start moving forward with that. The backflow preventers and the check and backflow preventers got into that discussion that we just had with the City of Phoenix's use of the standard. And so we thought maybe that'd be a good way to start reintroducing and getting those put in the outside right-of-way. I'll mention really quickly, our next meeting will be on August 27th, and we'll be identifying what we're going to be talking about on that. But one of the things, I sent it to, one of the things the group has, and again, they're all new to this, they're trying to wrap their arms around what is outside of right-of-way. And I kind of wanted to have two discussions with you folks, everybody who's been on this. One, I put together some examples. I sent it to Gordon earlier in an email. But more importantly, the idea of what are we going to do? We're actually starting to get these specifications standards developed. In 2020, potentially we'd have the one that's going, of course, in the standard mag spec with the Pervious pavement. But in 2021, we are going to have outside right-of-way spec standards and details. We need to figure out what kind of home they're going to have. Are we going to have a separate document that's attached with mag? There's a lot of cross-referencing going on. As we put together the bioswale one, we find the obvious connections we have to be referencing. We want to be referencing existing mag standards and materials. How do we put this together? Do we have a separate document? Do we create a new chapter within the existing document for outside right-of-way, so it's a cleaner crossover? How do we want to do this? So I'm kind of throwing that out as a topic for discussion. I wanted to get feedback, if we could, even today.
Well, Peter, one thing I actually was thinking about when I was talking to Gordon about this is I have a concern that if we actually have an outer right-of-way standard in our in right-of-way book, it could get confused by some of the engineers. We're going to pull this detail out for pervious concrete for a local road because it's a low traffic road. I don't know how well that would go. I don't know if it would be a concern, but that's a question that came up.
And in line with that is that most of our agencies adopt the MAG documents by name. So by inserting, a lot of the on-site stuff, which, we may want to use, but maybe there are others that we don't want to use at this time or have to test thoroughly. So I would lean more towards a separate document that we could adopt separately.
Yeah, I would echo that, Warren, as we keep it, at least start off as a separate standalone document. And then if we see, as the years go on, if we see we need to join it, then we do it at that time. But I think, I think starting off, we should have as a separate document.
I also agree with that. I'll add my thoughts to that I agree it should be a separate document.
In that sense, and I don't disagree whatsoever, we actually started it that way. We need to think about a numbering system fairly quickly. Do we want to have a parallel numbering system, which I think may cause confusion, or do we want to set up a new numbering system for outside right-of-way that prevents, at least inhibits the thought that which book are we talking about? Is it, the concrete in 340 versus concrete in the outside right-of-way, or I think we have to think of a numbering system that's going to be creating less confusion in the long run.
Yeah, and we don't want to take something that MAG may want to expand into in the future either. So we got to really that's a good question, Peter. We got to give that some thought. So.
And the other thing.
Do we add a one? No.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, do we use it as a 1,000 series or something like that? We put a 1 in front of all of these and try to do something like that. But we need to come to some rapid, by the first of the year, I think we need to think how we're going to do this. Right now, we're just using MAG numbers, and any number works for the wrapping of these things, but we're going to have to decide how this is going to be first. A letter in front or something.
Yeah, I think the numbering system definitely is going to have to be different, because if you're in the outer right of way and you're specking a section 601 dry wells, and it's got to be installed with a storm drain per in right of way 601, that could get confusing.
Precisely.
Yeah, there's also some discussion about some of the MAG specs you may want to modify them for the outside right-of-way. Maybe the asphalt doesn't need to be as strenuous for a parking lot as it does for a street, for example. And yeah, so you don't want them getting confused, but it's also kind of handy to be able to reference two MAG spec numbers in the outside right-of-way type documents, so that you don't have to duplicate everything. You know what I mean? If there is no change, it's easier just to refer to an existing MAG spec.
Yeah, it became readily apparent when we were running through the bioswale. That was a frequent thing that was happening. We were seeing existing ones. For example, the riprap materials was in the riprap spec was precisely what was needed for riprap on a rock bioswale. Well, why have two of them?
It's going to be challenging not to have overlaps. I hear you.
Yes, definitely.
So we're at that stage. We've got to address it, and again, we're toward the end of this year, but it's something that probably January we need to start making some decisions, because the cases will be starting to move forward. But I wanted to bring that up now so we could be doing that. Additionally, I sent out some general information about the definition of what is going to go in an outside right of way. What are we specifically dealing with? So maybe in the future, maybe we can, Gordon, you can kind of share my thoughts that I sent in that email, and we can kick that around also. Maybe over the next few months we can try to get this honed in. It's happening now, and we happily, because we now have a bunch of additional people really interested in the specification project, the process. And it's going to bring a bunch of new blood into this.
Did you want me to pull up your email, Peter? It might be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's go ahead. I mean, I'm trying to throw a lot of food for thought out there and get this rolling. As my wife keeps reminding me, you must retire one of these days. And I like the idea that there's actually people out there who got interested in this. So I have to be thinking of the future. I want this to continue to grow. If you can get that, I'm not sure. It's a little small.
Let me see.
Yeah, I don't know. Can everybody read that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, basically, I was trying to throw some ideas around. What the question came to me: what's outside of right of way? I'll start just throwing random concepts of, these are public facilities behind the curb or sidewalk. That sometimes fits the definition. Utility connections from private to public. There we go. Yeah, for example, the backflow preventers and things like that. They tend to be something where we're going from a public side to a private side. Facilities built for parks, libraries, public buildings, etc. Anything outside the building footprint, but not in the streets. And you would have, this is where the parallel stuff comes in: parking lots, landscaped areas, irrigation systems, the different types of sidewalks, curbs, and gutters that are used off-site that are different than are used for the right-of-way work. Drainage systems, the PVC pipes, detention tanks, drywall, such. Fencing potentially could be more of an outside right-of-way. We're generally not driving through fences, but there's something that's used on both right-of-way and outside right-of-way projects. Erasure protection, again, another parallel one with gabions and such. Other interface elements we've talked about before, dumpsters, the facilities that are in a lot of the supplements and bollards that are definitely one of those barricades potentially. We could make the list longer, but I want to start throwing these out so we can give a definition and have this added to or modified so we can kind of get this group having a bit, now that there's going to be likely a separate book, I think it's going to need to have its own identity of what it's really focused on.
Peter, were you thinking of creating like a general conditions section also, similar to what's in the current mag book with abbreviations and bidding requirements, scope work, that type of item, or would you just reference
I think the goal would be to reference as much in the existing mag as possible. I don't think there's a desire to necessarily, because again, we're not talking about private construction. We're still talking about the use. We know others are going to use it, but these are things that are used by the agencies, for the agencies, for their facilities. It's just a different type of application. So I'd like to avoid that. I know at one time we talked about it, and I kind of went back to my old list from a number of years ago. My thinking is let's try to reference as much as we can in the existing mag.
And maybe that's the best idea is the items that don't actually cross-reference to the existing mag to the outer right-of-way. I like your idea of throwing a 1 in front of it. You know, if you're looking for parking lot asphalt, instead of it's 321, it's 1321.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely have some work ahead. So
the other angle.
Okay, we'll throw.
The other angle to think about, Greg, is, you know, maybe even putting alpha characters there, you know, for example, you know, saying to really differentiate, so make it the, you know, ROW 1301 or something like that, you know, out, or I want to see, it'd be ORW, out of right of way, you know, something like that, that really kind of throws it out there that, hey, this isn't the standard mag kind of determination.
We definitely got the feedback from the landscape architects that have been attending going, yeah, the mag specs are referenced all the time, but there are the agreement that they're being abused the way they are right now, and that something like this would be very beneficial to the outside entities. Landscape architects who deal with mag all the time, they seem to think this was a great idea, which is, we've wanted them involved forever, and it's a great chance to get them in.
Yeah, I agree, Peter. That's a good idea, but I think when you start revising the specs, I think it's going to be important to have a contractor contingent in there as well.
You got it exactly right. So Wayne with Logan Simpson, was one of his outreaches we talked about was going and getting the contracting community. He's going to reach out to some of the landscape contractors who are doing this work for agencies and such, and try to get their reviews and involvement and potential attendance to the meetings.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. That was, I think section 400 needs a lot of updating.
Well, and it doesn't prohibit us from having that group look at stuff that's going to retain and remain in the existing mag standard. Just because it's now the right-of-way group doesn't mean that, just like the pervious pavement, it may have originated there, but it could easily be cases within the mag and be upgrading those. It's just a different level of expertise coming in, different group of people looking at it.
Yeah.
One question.
You're gonna have to monitor them too, Peter. So.
One question that I had for outside the right of way is, how does this impact the development community, and who's bringing them in to be involved in this?
good question. I know that with having issues involvement with their sustainability college, they do have some connections and contacts there, and that has been brought up, that there's going to have to be a number of different outreach potentials. Logan Simpson, again, was a great add to that, getting a consultant who has ties both inside, outside the right-of-way with private developers. They have multiple contacts, and they're committing a number of people to be attending these meetings.
No, that's good. Like I said, what I meant by just keep checking on them is we just want to make sure you might have to keep reminding them it's not a design document, it's construction. So
Gordon can attest to that. That's a constant effort. Yes.
Oh, that's all I'm saying about that.
Yeah, I'm the gatekeeper on that one, apparently.
All right.
So anyways, really good information, Peter. Hopefully we're actually going to maybe possibly get a book next year and be able to start moving again forward on that. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm very confident on that.
All right. Well, thank you for all the information. Next one is the City of Phoenix supplement to MAG. Jose, are you still out there?
I think he had to leave a little early, so I don't.
You have to leave.
Anymore.
Okay. So,
I did sit in on the
what they've
last
got,
meeting
what Phoenix
here.
has got going on. So, I think I'll just go ahead and skip that one. See if there's any notes in here. I don't see any notes in here. So, other than that general discussion, like we talked earlier.
I think we just lost you, Craig.
Greg, are you still out there?
Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks to me like there's only 2 cases left. Which would be 2001, the bloopers, and the 2004, the Pervious.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I'm kind of hoping that if everybody has a chance to look those over and we can vote on them next month, we won't need to have a meeting in October. I think it just comes down to if everybody feels comfortable with the changes to the pervious concrete case and if they need more time or not. But hopefully they'll have a chance to look at it this next month and it'll be ready to go. That's
Yeah, if Roy can send out the revisions quickly so we can get it looked at beforehand, that'll be good.
Yeah, I'm just about to say the same thing, Jim. If Roy could get those handled, we have the working group meeting on the 20th. If there were any additional concerns or anything like that, if any of your staff had issues, we could certainly address those then, and then hopefully have if there were anything needed to be done, a finalized document before the next meeting.
So yeah, so Roy might have to do a little extra work in circulating it and keeping Gordon in the loop. And, as long as most of the voting members don't see it the day they're voting on it, there's a good chance it'll go by. It should pass, quickly. So
let me throw out there, if the committee is acceptable, I mean, I can even put something together and throw it out there before we meet with the materials working group. So possibly even something next week, just to throw it out there to the committee, and then obviously go through the materials working group on the 20th and pick up if there's any additional comments or feedback in between, just to kind of keep this process moving. If that's acceptable to everybody, I mean, I could try to get something sent out either end of this week or certainly next week. for everybody to look at, kind of what we've talked about today.
I think that's important, Roy, if you could do that by the first of next week, you know, get that out, get that to Gordon so he could get it out to committee members. And that way there would still be a couple of weeks for them to look at it. If they had some additional concerns, we could try to handle those concerns on the 20th at the working group.
I will do that. I will send, I'll address the comments we talked about today, and I'll have something to Gordon the first part of next week.
Sounds good. Craig, have you been able to log back in and join us, or? I don't see him on the list. I think that's pretty much the end of our meeting today anyway. And
time to go.
You don't need a vote to adjourn, so I think we can just call it quits for today.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Gordon.
Yeah, thanks for everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.